Welcome back to my YouTube channel, where today we explore one of the most jaw-dropping discoveries in the world of rare coins. A tale that spirals through decades of mystery, incredible luck, and the wild currents of the international collector's market. Buckle in as we dive into the fascinating story behind a 1974 half-dollar coin, an unassuming piece of metal that somehow became the centerpiece of a historical auction, fetching a staggering $524 million and rewriting the rules of coin collecting forever. It all started in the suburbs of Santa Clara, California. In a small two-story home tucked away on a quiet cul-de-sac, an elderly man named Calvin Mooney had just begun the tedious process of cleaning out his garage. He had lived in that house for over 40 years, accumulating everything from old license plates to dusty furniture and weathered boxes filled with forgotten memories. Calvin had no idea that hidden among the clutter lay a single object that would soon change the course of his life, and the lives of those around him. Inside a worn showbox labeled Dad's Junk Drawer, buried beneath old report cards, buttons, and military dog tags, Calvin found a small velvet pouch. He could barely remember ever seeing it before. Curious, he poured the contents onto the workbench. Out slid 4 coins, 3 ordinary-looking nickels and 1 unusually bright half-dollar. Something about the coin felt different. It was heavier than he expected and had a pristine shine despite its age. The inscription on the edge was still sharp, and the year etched on the face was 1974. Calvin wasn't a coin collector. He had never spent more than a few seconds looking at the coins in his wallet. But something about this particular half-dollar nagged at him. He turned it over in his hands. It was a Kennedy half-dollar, just like the ones minted after JFK's assassination. But it didn't feel like the others he'd seen over the years. The design had subtle differences, a slightly raised bust, a shimmering surface almost like platinum, and a mint mark that didn't look quite right. Calvin decided to do what any curious mind would. He took a photo of the coin and posted it to a few online forums. The responses were polite at first, with casual collectors commenting on the design. But within hours, the tone changed. Messages started flooding in. People were asking questions Calvin didn't understand. They wanted more photos, precise weight measurements, even videos of him flipping the coin under different lighting. He obliged, thinking it was all harmless fun, but one message stood out. It came from a private account with no name attached. The message was simple: do not sell. That coin is unique. You have no idea what you found. It was followed by an offer, $2 million, cash, in hand, no questions asked. At first, Calvin laughed it off. It had to be a prank. Who would pay $2 million for an old coin found in a garage? But the offers kept coming. 1 week later, he received a certified letter from an international coin expert named Dr. Vance Relling, inviting him to a private evaluation at the Numismatics Institute of Geneva. The institute even offered to cover all expenses, first-class airfare, a luxury hotel, and a personal translator. Despite his hesitation, Calvin flew to Switzerland. At the institute, a team of experts awaited him. They examined the coin under microscopes, scanned it using advanced imaging, and ran a battery of chemical tests. After 2 days, Dr. Relling emerged with a look Calvin would never forget. "Mr. Mooney," he said, "this coin is not just rare. It is impossible." The coin was not struck in the usual copper-nickel composition. It was made of a previously undocumented alloy containing iridium and ruthenium, 2 rare and valuable elements. The weight and density confirmed it wasn't a counterfeit. Even stranger, the coin's surface showed no signs of wear or exposure, as though it had been sealed in a vacuum since the day it was minted. But the real shock came from the mint mark. Official records stated that all 1974 half-dollars were struck in Denver and Philadelphia. Calvin's coin had an obscure mark that didn't match either location. It bore a ZC mint mark, something that had never been used officially. Dr. Relling explained that in the 1970s, there were rumors of a secret experimental minting program based out of a classified site called Zone Cobalt, a facility allegedly built by the Treasury to test new metals and anti-counterfeiting techniques. The program was scrapped before it could go public, and all coins minted during that time were supposedly destroyed. But now, standing in Geneva, they had proof that at least one coin had survived. Word spread fast. News outlets caught wind of the story. Headlines around the globe read, "Lost US coin worth millions found in California garage." Collectors, museums, and even private vault owners in the Middle East and Asia began preparing offers. Calvin, once an anonymous retiree, was now a man at the center of an international frenzy. At an invitation-only auction held in Monaco, the coin was introduced under heavy security. The room was filled with billionaires, art dealers, and numismatic historians. Bidding began at $10 million. Within minutes, it surged past $100 million. At the 31-minute mark, the gavel fell with a final bid of $524 million from an anonymous bidder representing a private family collection based in Abu Dhabi. Calvin, stunned, took the podium to thank the room. Cameras flashed as he humbly recounted his story, how the coin sat in a showbox for decades while he mowed lawns and clipped coupons. He donated a portion of the proceeds to education and historical preservation causes. The rest, he said, would go to living the life his late wife always dreamed about, traveling the world, helping grandchildren through college, and finally buying that little cottage on the Oregon coast they used to talk about. But the story didn't end there. Following the auction, experts began digging deeper into the origins of the coin. Documents emerged from recently declassified government files, confirming that a program known as Project Eclipse did exist under the U.S. Treasury Department during the early 1970s. The project's aim was to create coins that were not only counterfeit-proof but also trackable via magnetic resonance. These coins, according to the files, were intended to be used in international diplomacy, tokens of peace handed discreetly to allies during critical negotiations. Only 12 coins were believed to have been struck before the project was terminated. 11 were destroyed. The 12th, dubbed Eclipse 1, went missing in 1974. Somehow, some way, it ended up in a garage in Santa Clara, waiting for the right hands to rediscover it. The ripple effects of the discovery were enormous. Interest in numismatics exploded. Coin shows saw record attendance. Television networks greenlit documentaries. Universities began offering special seminars on historical currency. Even the US Mint issued a statement acknowledging the historical importance of the find, though they stopped short of confirming its origin. For Calvin, life changed in ways he never imagined. He became an overnight celebrity in the collector world. Invitations poured in, from the Smithsonian, from late-night talk shows, even from the White House. He declined most, preferring a quiet life. But he did agree to participate in a feature-length documentary titled Half Dollar, Whole Story, which went on to win multiple awards for its captivating exploration of how one man, one coin, and one moment in time reshaped an entire field. As years passed, whispers of the remaining 11 experimental coins stirred the imaginations of collectors and adventurers alike. Expeditions were launched to old treasury warehouses, former mint facilities, and abandoned government bunkers. Some claimed to find pieces, others swore they saw coins that bore similar traits, but none could match the confirmed provenance of Calvin's Eclipse 1. In time, legends formed around the 1974 half dollar. Some said it carried a secret encryption code that could unlock Cold War archives. Others believed the coin had been infused with a rare isotope, giving it unique electromagnetic properties. A few conspiracy theorists even insisted that the coin was never minted on Earth at all, pointing to the presence of iridium, an element more commonly found in asteroids than in Earth's crust. Of course, Calvin never put much stock in those theories. He knew what the coin meant to him, a link to his father, whose belongings had been packed away for so long. His father had served in an administrative role at a federal building in San Francisco, a place that, as it turned out, had quietly housed documents related to Project Eclipse in the 1970s. Calvin suspected that his father had received the coin as part of an internal retirement gift, a keepsake never meant to be spent or displayed. Instead, it had been tucked away with his other mementos, waiting patiently for fate to intervene, and intervene it did, not just for Calvin, but for the entire world of coin collecting. The sale of the 1974 half-dollar redefined what was possible, inspiring a generation of new collectors to believe in the impossible, that sometimes, history hides in the smallest places, and treasure is just a heartbeat away from being discovered, from dusty garages to international auction houses, from secret government projects to half-century-old memories. The story of the $524 million half-dollar continues to shine like the polished face of the coin itself, bright, enduring, and utterly unforgettable, and who knows? Maybe in a drawer, in a showbox, or under a floorboard somewhere, another coin waits, glinting softly in the shadows, ready to turn an ordinary life into a legend. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Next, 1983 D half-dollar coin, where the ordinary becomes extraordinary, and forgotten pieces of change unlock secrets that span generations. Today, we bring you one of the most astonishing tales in the history of coin collecting. A story that began with a trip to an estate auction in Colorado and ended with the sale of a single 1983 D half-dollar for a record-shattering $328 million. But behind the numbers lies a story even richer, of forgotten history, Cold War espionage, mystery engravings, and a man who never imagined that the clinking sound in a small wooden box could change the world. It started in Pueblo, Colorado. A town nestled between the Arkansas River and the shadows of the Rockies, Pueblo was known for its steel mills, wide-open skies, and generations of hardworking families. One of those families was the Bartons. After the passing of the last elder, Harold Barton, a local estate sale was arranged to clear out the contents of his sprawling farmhouse on the outskirts of town. Harold had no children, no surviving siblings, and a reputation in the community as a quiet man with a habit of collecting odd things. When the estate auction opened its gates, local bargain hunters and antique enthusiasts descended on the property, hoping to find vintage furniture, classic tools, or maybe even an old rifle or two. Among them was Thomas Greeley, a 32-year-old hobbyist and school teacher who had recently begun collecting coins after inheriting a small collection from his late uncle. Thomas wasn't expecting much. He walked among boxes of faded photographs, brittle newspapers, rusted license plates, and forgotten radios. But as he rounded the corner of the barn's interior, he noticed an old wooden cash box that had been partially buried under a tarp and a broken rocking chair. It was heavy and sealed with a rusted latch. The auctioneer hadn't priced it individually and offered it to Thomas for $5. Without thinking much of it, Thomas paid the fee and carried the box to his truck back home. He opened it on his kitchen table. The box creaked like something ancient awakening. Inside were rolls of coins, stacked neatly, with paper wrappers from banks long closed. Most of the coins were mundane: nickels, quarters, and a few wheat pennies. But one coin stood out immediately. It was larger, had a dulled silver tone, and bore the image of President Kennedy. A half-dollar. He examined the date, 1983. And then he noticed that D mint mark. A 1983 D Kennedy half-dollar. He thought little of it at first. That year and mint were known to have produced millions. It shouldn't have been rare. Still, habit kicked in. He pulled out his coin scale. The 1983 D half-dollar weighed more than it should. Not much more, but just enough to make Thomas pause. He picked up his loupe and inspected the edge. The reading looked too clean, as though it had never touched another coin. He flipped it again, inspecting the reverse. And that's when he saw it. Something he couldn't explain. At the base of the eagle's tail feathers was a micro-engraving. Invisible to the naked eye, but clear through magnification. It read V17. Curious, he searched through numismatic forums. No record existed of any 1983 D half dollar containing a V17 engraving. He contacted a local coin shop. The owner examined it and shrugged. "Could be a die variety, could be a forgery," he said. "But if it's real, and that engraving's legit, it's worth looking into." Thomas began his research in earnest. Over the next 2 weeks, he contacted half a dozen experts across the country. Most dismissed it. One, however, did not. Her name was Dr. Alice Navarro, a numismatic researcher based in Maryland who specialized in Cold War-era coinage and mint errors. When Thomas sent her high-resolution images of the coin, she replied with a simple sentence: "Do not sell this. Do not alter it. I'm flying out immediately." She arrived 2 days later, tired but energized, with a briefcase full of archival records. She examined the coin under her own equipment, took notes, and then began explaining a story Thomas could barely believe. In the early 1980s, amid mounting economic pressure and lingering paranoia from the Cold War, a secret program had been initiated under the Treasury Department called Operation Voltfire. Its purpose was to test the feasibility of embedding microencoded messages within circulating currency. The logic was elegant: coins, which passed through thousands of hands across borders, could serve as physical messengers. Each coin would carry an identifier, a code, or a transmission, something only readable with the right technology. According to declassified documents Navarro had uncovered during her research, only a few prototype coins were ever produced. Most were believed to be destroyed in 1984 following a scandal within the department. But it seemed, against all odds, that at least one coin had escaped destruction. And it was now sitting on Thomas Greeley's kitchen table. She ran a series of tests with her portable scanning devices, which included electromagnetic resonance detectors and microparticle analysis tools. The alloy of the coin didn't match standard 1983 D specifications. It contained traces of palladium and osmium, materials that had no reason being in a half dollar. More baffling, the coin exhibited unusual magnetic fields when subjected to alternating currents. The fields fluctuated in patterns that Navarro described as mathematical, almost musical. She made one final call, to an associate at the National Museum of Intelligence and Covert Technologies. Within days, federal interest skyrocketed. Representatives from the Smithsonian, the U.S. Mint, and even unnamed defense contractors contacted Thomas, offering to purchase the coin. The bids began modestly, $100,000, then $1 million. But they escalated quickly. A European banking syndicate offered $27 million. A private collection in Dubai doubled that. An anonymous collector from Shanghai sent a formal offer, $210 million. Still, Thomas hesitated. It wasn't about the money, not entirely. This coin represented something more, an artifact of espionage, secrecy, and an era filled with danger and brilliance. He agreed to a formal appraisal at an international coin symposium in Zurich, under tight security. At the symposium, held in a converted monastery, the coin was unveiled during a midnight session reserved for the most elite collectors, historians, and institutional buyers. The room, dimly lit with red velvet curtains and armed guards at every door, erupted in whispers as the 1983 D was placed under a glass dome. Navarro presented the full findings. The V17 engraving, she revealed, corresponded to an encryption protocol used by NSA field agents in 1983, specifically linked to a covert operation in West Berlin. The palladium traces were indicative of shielding technologies used in microtransmitters. The coin, in essence, was a carrier, perhaps a beacon, perhaps a key to decoding a long-lost intelligence sequence. Bidding began. The floor erupted in a frenzy of offers. Institutions battled against billionaires. The final offer came from an entity known only as the Aurora Trust, based in Liechtenstein, who offered $328 million and full historical custody rights with a public exhibit clause. The gavel fell, and history was made. Thomas, now among the wealthiest men in his county, donated half of the proceeds to educational initiatives in rural Colorado. He built a center for historical cryptography in partnership with Dr. Navarro, dedicated to preserving the quiet artifacts of global intelligence. The coin itself was placed on display at a private rotating exhibit that toured the world: Tokyo, Berlin, Cairo, and Buenos Aires, where millions stood in awe of the strange object that had once sat unnoticed in a farmhouse barn. But the mystery didn't end there. In the months following the sale, a string of similar discoveries began trickling in. A 1983 D quarter with a strange glow. A 1984 nickel with a strange fluctuation under UV light. A collector in Maine claimed to possess a Roosevelt dime that distorted radio signals when placed near AM receivers. The theory emerged that Operation Vault-Fire had created dozens, perhaps hundreds, of coins, many of which had never been accounted for. Governments reopened old cases. Historians re-examined coinage from the Reagan years with new eyes. Encryption specialists began using AI to analyze the micropatterns in the engravings. And a new wave of collectors emerged, not just looking for rare coins, but for evidence of a secret history hiding in plain sight. Thomas, for his part, retreated from public life. He returned to teaching but continued his private research with Navarro. Together, they co-authored a book entitled Metal and Memory, detailing their journey and the implications of hidden communication in everyday currency. Every few months, another strange coin appeared in the mail. No return address. No note. Just a coin, wrapped in linen, bearing odd engravings, foreign alloys, and whispers of something long forgotten. Thomas kept them in a vault, not for wealth, but for study. Each coin told a story, of fear, of genius, of a world that once believed the future could be hidden in the past, and maybe, just maybe, it still can. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time with another true story that proves history is still very much alive.